Welcome to this short act of worship for this Christmas Eve, or whenever you are tuning in to watch it. You are very welcome to be with us as we remember Christ born to us. We begin with a time of prayer. Lord, in this holy season of prayer and song and laughter, we praise you for the great wonders you've sent us, for shining star and angel's song, for infant's cry in lowly manger. We praise you for the Word made flesh in a little child. We behold his glory and are bathed in its radiance. Be with us as we sing the ironies of Christmas, the incomprehensible comprehended, the poetry made hard fact, the helpless babe who cracks the world asunder. We'll kneel before you, shepherds, innkeepers, wise men. Help us to rise bigger than we are. Amen. Our carols are pre-recorded, and we're going to begin with one of my favourites, Mary, Did You Know?
Mary, did you know that your baby boy would one day walk on water? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would save our sons and daughters? Did you know that your baby boy has come to make you new? This child that you delivered will soon deliver you. Mary, did you know that your baby boy would give sight to the blind man? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would calm a storm with his hand? Did you know that your baby boy has walked where angels trod? When you kissed your little baby, you've kissed the face of God. Oh, Mary, did you know? The blind will see, the deaf will hear, the dead will live again. The lame will leap, the dumb will speak, the praises of the Lamb. Mary, did you know that your baby boy is Lord of all creation? Mary, did you know that your baby boy will one day rule the nations? Did you know that your baby boy is heaven's perfect lamb? And the sleeping child you're holding is the great
Most of you are aware that a proportion of my time as a minister is spent enabling a series of small groups and activities we've called the Kairos movement. I've often referred to it as a deconstructed church or a network of individuals and small groups. But a term I've come across recently that I like is an ecosystem, which I think might be an even better description, because each group offers something into the whole and is symbiotic with others. The other image that works incredibly well for me is of the root and fungal networks that exist beneath the soil in a woodland, the wood wide web, I think they call it. This network warns, passes nutrients, actively shepherds the growth of trees in its midst, so each thrives in the whole life cycle of the wood. One element of our Kairos ecosystem is the Nomad podcast group. In this group, we listen to a Nomad podcast in advance and then we meet and discuss it. One such episode during Advent, the hosts of the podcast were reflecting on reading John's Gospel. I'm not going to go into detail, but one particular point that was made was that Tim, one of the hosts, had realised he'd rarely read the Gospel without seeking to harmonise it with the other three, and that there was a richness in seeing it independently without seeking to paper over any cracks or try and harmonise those areas where perhaps there seems to be a tension or even contradiction. And that comment led me to read the birth story of Jesus from Matthew and Luke in the same way. What we normally do, of course, is exactly to do what Tim said, to piece together the elements of the story and make a grand narrative. But instead this year, I looked more into why they each omit what seem really key areas of Jesus' birth story. Elements that if we'd been witnesses even years after, we would have definitely thought to include. But as we know, they had access to each other's source materials at some level. It can only really be a deliberate omission. We know, of course, there are really positive reasons why they do differ. They were speaking to different people, different congregations, different times, and different expectations and needs. Matthew makes a strong case for Jesus being Messiah. He focuses on his being of the line of David through Joseph. It's Joseph who has the dream. It's Joseph who is tipped off at the end of the story by the angel to flee. It's Joseph who is the means of God's guidance in the story. It can feel a little bit male-dominated in that respect, but in relaying the story of Matthew does of the kings and their visit and Herod's wrath, he both provides a reason for Jesus and the family to flee to Egypt, but also an amplification of Jesus' royal lineage. He also introduces the idea that maybe Jesus is a saviour not just for the Jews, but through them the whole world. Luke instead has a more feminine cast, although I don't think he was too worried about gender equality. He focuses on Mary, on her lineage, which is a much more priestly lineage and has within it Levi. The same Davidic line is still there in the story, in the census, in the lineage, but the line he paints points to Adam, paints Jesus as a new Adam, who embraces the whole world in who he represents and has come to save. Back in Matthew, we also have royalty worshipping extravagant, expensive gifts. They offer gold, frankincense and myrrh. In Luke, instead, there's a focus on poverty. A poor Mary and a poor Joseph, poor shepherds, a poor offering, as Jesus is named at the temple. In Luke also, the glory of God, the Spirit of God, seems to play a much greater role. Mary's first meeting with Gabriel seems matter of fact. It's only the strange language in the message itself that reveals the angelic nature of her visit, but then the Spirit moves her and she sings a song full of divine wisdom and prophetic foretelling. It echoes Zechariah's own song, his experience, a priest, another priest in the story, who plays his role although he's left dumb, and the story is revealed and relayed through Elizabeth, his wife, mum of John the Baptist, who is also Spirit-filled, another prophetic voice, a divine voice speaking into what is coming and who is coming. Even Simeon and Anna, meeting Jesus in the temple as he's named, offer Spirit-filled prophecies into Jesus' life. And finally, in Luke, Jesus begins his ministry seemingly age 30, which is the age that priests began their ministry. And so Luke appears to be offering us a Spirit-filled, Spirit-birthed, prophetic and priestly Jesus, a Jesus who first revealed himself in the temple as a teenager. But a Jesus who is also of a poor origin, with a love and understanding of those poor people. The shepherds perhaps perfectly combining both ideas, having their own divine encounter, the best of all, it would seem, the glory of God shining among them, and then a host of heavenly beings. These poor men on the fringe of society offer their simple gifts at the stable and become those who share the good news of his birth. Again, standing in total contrast to Matthew's royal extravagance and revelation. So which makes more sense? And can we really harmonise both stories? I think we first have to accept that Matthew and Luke are not trying to tell us the whole story, but instead reveal to us elements of what and who Jesus was and is for us. So on that basis, if we're looking for history, I think it's okay to pick the pieces to make the whole, as long as we don't lose the point they're making when we do, which I think perhaps we do. They do have one thing in common, which is showing how Jesus recapitulates history, not just retelling it, but redeeming it. How in living his life, Jesus faces the similar situations and challenges as the people of God and the Spirit-filled heroes of the faith do. Things recorded and shaping how the people of God became. But in facing those same situations, he then redeems the past failings, shows the way life could and should have been lived with divine wisdom, and hopefully arming us if we face the same again. There's strong argument in doing this that Matthew is showing us echoes of a Moses-like leader, or perhaps through him symbolising Israel as a whole people. A leader, a people coming out of Egypt, and Jesus relives the Exodus, doesn't he? The time in the wilderness through his own 40 days. In the Moses story we have the evil Pharaoh in his own who kills the children and he narrowly escapes. It's Matthew, we have Herod. In Moses is the one being hidden from this. In Matthew it's baby Jesus that needs hiding and is then taken to Egypt. Both then come out of Egypt. In Luke, instead we might see echoes of Samuel taking into the temple as a boy, God's Spirit in him giving him wisdom beyond his years and overthrowing the corruption that's found its way into the temple. In Luke, that priestly lineage, the late start in ministry, the temple focus for the story, showing how Jesus reveals God and through these new insights turns ideas of who he is on their head. And of course, we've not even touched into John, where Jesus is the light of the world at the heart of creation and recreation. But back to Matthew and Luke, where we get most of our nativity story, which is right, which is nearer the historical truth, if any. Well, my experience is whenever you try and put God in a box, he shows you how he doesn't fit. If you try to assess his personality type, he shows he's gifted in the whole spectrum of human possibilities. The fact is, any way you might try and delineate Jesus, he's always both and probably more. I suspect when we harmonise the stories into one box, we lose the fact that neither grasp the full reality and enormity of God made man on their own. The other two boxes were already too small. Why would we make one big one? So he is priest, he is prophet, he is king, and yet he's more. His life echoes the great becoming stories and speaks into many of them, shining new light into them, revealing outcomes that give life and a way beyond the traps of the old. I'd hazard a guess in the evening of the night before Christmas, it's not the question you want to spend hours reflecting on. But let's imagine most of us living here in the UK that we could recall the events and histories that have shaped who we are as individuals, and alongside that the events and history that shaped our nation, both of which I guess will include some elements that make us cringe. As a nation, the Crusades, colonialism, our treatment of people of difference of all kinds. I'll leave you to bring your mind your own personal failings. But then imagine someone was born whose life echoes those pasts and brings new insight into the past decisions and actions and shows a way of love and flourishing instead of pain and hurt. I'm not sure we're looking for a Moses or a Samuel or even prophet, priest or king. I'm not sure we have a clear idea of who and what our Saviour needs to be like. But it is someone who would show us a better way, A third way, as Jesus often did. A life-giving way, a counter the dominant culture kingdom way. And I think Jesus embodies that. And wouldn't we want to give thanks and worship someone who does that for us? Wouldn't we want to tell people how his life has done that, explain how it did so that others might be released from their own past mistakes? For me, that's why the story of Jesus' life as a whole, and especially when told from different perspectives, is so powerful. It not only speaks into the stories of the Old Testament and the New, but places them and what God was seeking to do in new light. But those stories newly revealed and Jesus' own life offer me stories that resonate with my life and for the life of the culture that shaped me. In doing so, they liberate me to step back from the emotion and pain and to critique and be released from the negativity of any founding stories. It allows me to stand at a distance from my life or our shared history and ask, how could we do that differently? How could I be a better person? How might we as a nation act in the future to promote the flourishing and blessing of the world? And how might our government, which arguably is more aligned to kings and riches than priests and poverty, change their rules on how they operate, how they deal with the issues that surround us? And it's not just the history of Jesus' life that enables us to do that. It's that same spirit encounter, the glory of God shining around, the conversations with angels unawares, that continues to steer us, guide us, and reveal a kingdom worth of possibilities to us. The story didn't stop 2,000 years ago. It's still playing out in you and I together today. And especially as a community that works together to share our perspectives, whether they be rich and royal perspectives or poor, priestly, and hopefully all spirit-filled, the light of the world recreative perspectives. We become an ecosystem of people filled with light. We become that life-giving network that lies beneath and shapes the reality. Together we see more than we see alone. Together we can shine a Jesus-shaped light on what the future might hold and how we might shape it. Does that mean I don't want to tell the simple harmonized story of Jesus' birth? That I frown when the kids tell their nativity story and act it out? No. That has its own value, if only to shine a little light and joy and wonder into the world. But I also encourage you to look beyond it, to find the depths of grace that are hidden beneath the surface, the depths of who Jesus is, the Jesus who isn't trapped in a box of our own making. Amen. I invite you to sing along now for our final carol, It Came Upon the Midnight Clear.
It came upon the midnight clear, that glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch their harps of gold. Peace on the earth, goodwill to men, from Ham's all gracious King. The world in solemn stillness lay to hear the angels sing. Still through the cloven skies they come, with peaceful wings unfurled, and still their heavenly music floats o'er all the weary world. Above its sad and lowly plains they bend on hovering wing, and ever o'er it Babel sounds the blessed angels sing. Yet with the woes of sin and strife the world has suffered long, strain have rolled 2,000 years of wrong, and man at war with man is not the love song which they bring. Oh, hush the noise, ye men of strife, and hear the angels sing. Hastening on by prophets seen of old, when with the ever-circling years shall come the time foretold, when peace shall over all the earth its ancient splendors fling, and the whole world give back the song which now the angels sing.
A prayer from Prayers for a Privileged People by Water Bruggeman, entitled Christmas the Very Next Day. Had we the chance, we would have rushed to Bethlehem to see this thing that has come to pass. Had we been a day later, we would have found the manger empty and the family departed. We'd have learned that they fled to Egypt, warned that the baby was endangered, sought by the establishment of the day, that understood how his very life threatened the way things are. We would have paused at the empty stall and wondered how this baby from the very beginning was under threat. The powers understood that his grace threatened all our coercions. They understood that his truth challenged all our lies. They understood that his power to heal nullified our many pathologies. They understood that his power to forgive vetoed the power of guilt and the drama of debt among us. From day one they pursued him and schemed and conspired until finally on a grey Friday they got him. No wonder the family fled in order to give him time for his life. We could still pause at the empty barn and ponder that all our babies are under threat, all the vulnerable who stand at risk before predators, our babies who face the slow erosion of consumerism, our babies who face the reach of sexual exploitation, our babies who face the call to war, placed, as we say, in harm's way, our babies elsewhere in the world who know of cold steel against soft arms and distended bellies from lack of food, our babies elsewhere who are caught in the fearful display of ruthless adult power. We ponder how peculiar this baby at Bethlehem is, summoned to save the world, and yet we know how, like every child, this one also was at risk. The manger is empty a day later. The father warned in a dream. Our world is so at risk, and yet we seek after and wait for the child named Emmanuel. Come be with us, you who are called God with us. Amen. We wish you blessings over this Christmas season, that you have time with family, with friends, that you stay warm, and that you seek the opportunity to bless others. A final blessing. May you be filled with the wonder of Mary, the obedience of Joseph, the joy of the angels, the eagerness of the shepherds, the determination of the Magi, and the peace of the Christ child. Almighty Father, Son, and Holy Spirit bless you now and forever. Amen. Merry Christmas.